On today's episode of Locked On Wild, the Minnesota Wild are 2-6-1 against Western Conference playoff teams. How does that stack up against the rest of the West against the same opponents?
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we are your team each and every day. And we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we'll discuss the mysterious injury circumstances for Filip Gustavsson that popped up out of nowhere, whether or not we should be concerned and what the plan would be if Gus does miss some time. We'll also take a look at the Wild record against Western Conference playoff teams, and we'll see how the other Western Conference playoff teams are doing against those same teams. And we will also talk about Kirill Kaprizov's place amongst the all-time Minnesota great athletes. He's on a bit of a run. I said on Twitter he is making the sun look cold. So we'll talk about that as well. My name is Seth, Toupal, host of Locked On Wild since 2021, and joined here today by Alex Micheletti. And Alex, unfortunately, not a Victory Micheletti Monday, but some late news, courtesy of the Green Bay Packers beating Seattle. The Minnesota Vikings are officially in the playoffs, so I'm going to count this week as a Victory Micheletti Monday. We always like to support those other Minnesota teams, so congrats to Luke Braun and Locked On Vikings for punching that ticket into the postseason. Hopefully the Wild will be able to do so a little bit later on down the line.
Yeah, exciting for the Vikings tonight, too. They have Joe Mauer blowing the Gallahorn and Vanilla Ice performing at halftime.
Oh, my God.
That is going to be outrageous. I'm sure they will not show that on TV, but it's still, If you're going to the game tonight, enjoy Vanilla Ice at halftime and Joe right before the start of the game.
Yeah, if you are there, please take discretionary video of the concert. Don't get yourself in trouble and get your account potentially banned. But if you feel like recording the performance and maybe sending it to me somehow, that would be great. But Alex, let's talk about what happened to the Minnesota Wild yesterday. They lose to the Vegas Golden Knights 3-2. That was on the heels of a pretty nifty and comfortable win against Philly, where we weren't sure what we were going to get from the Minnesota Wild because you had just lost Jake Middleton. He got put on long-term injured reserve. All of a sudden, Matt Zuccarello and Jonas Brodin are back. Like, just poof. They were skating, and it's like, well, we don't really know. We don't really know when they're going to be back. Like, they got to get medically cleared first, and then all of a sudden, hey, they're back and looked pretty good since. So that was a nice lift. But then Saturday, it was an afternoon game. Later Saturday, Jesper Wallstedt gets recalled under emergency circumstances. Jakub Lauko gets put on injured reserve. He's week to week. We'll talk about the injuries a little bit later. And I remember running the gambit myself. I was like, okay, this seems weird. I was thinking maybe it was like an illness. Somebody got sick and wasn't going to be able to go. Thought it was a Gus problem because he was supposed to start yesterday, and was like, well, maybe not. Maybe I don't know. And then all of a sudden, yeah, it turns out Gus is dealing with an upper or a lower body injury. Who knows? And didn't start. Jesper got the go. Jesper was fine against Vegas, but more mysterious circumstances and shrouding of injuries by the NHL, and This was something that popped up completely out of nowhere, which I guess leads me to believe that whether it be against Edmonton or his previous start, maybe pulled something and tried to kind of gut through it against Edmonton and just couldn't.
Yeah, when you're giving up a ton of goals, that's at least this season has been uncharacteristic for him. So yeah, just like you nailed it, that he was just trying to fight through it without telling anybody. And that's almost worse. So I'm glad they held him out, and they were kind of just forced to play Jesper because they didn't want Fleury to go back to back. He had a heck of a game versus Philly. Some of those saves were just incredible. Konechny's gonna see Fleury in his nightmares. Maybe his teammate too, Michkov, blocking an empty goal. Not ideal for Jesper to get in there. I'm sure he was, not as prepared as he, probably would wanted to be, but he held in there at least and gave him a chance. Kirill tried to single-handedly win it for the Wild by himself, but it was just this team. It's like a revolving door. I put on X. Go a game without an injury challenge, and they seem to not be able to do that. And and like you said, the most frustrating thing is, we don't know if a guy really has a minor injury or is it going to be months. We have no idea with Ek too. Like I always continue to say, is the most important player on this team. And so it's just, and I also put on X yesterday that this team is never boring. They will always give us storylines and just, chaos. And you just have to kind of ride the wave with this team.
Yeah, and speaking of ride the wave, if let's just assume that, because this is the great thing too, is you get some sort of injury diagnosis, and it's, well, what is his status going to be for Wednesday? And Hines said, well, we can't rule him out, and some of that is true. Like right. if you are dealing with some sort of like a muscle pull or something along those lines, it's going to require treatment, and it truly is a day-to-day scenario. So a lot of the times when he says we won't know until we get more info on Tuesday, that kind of stuff is, you can take at face value. But some of the other times where it's like, just like the Jake Middleton scenario, for instance, where you have an injury that's going to require surgery, and it's like, well, we can't rule him out for the next game. It's like, I think you can. I think you can.
It's okay to say that.
Yeah. You can, or like, we're not going to rule him out, and then all of a sudden that same day it's like, oh, put on LTIR. So it's like, okay, now you can.
Right. Without saying it, they just put it out in words. Yeah.
So it's Wednesday and Friday and Saturday games this week. So it's probably not going to see Gus on Wednesday against the Panthers. That would be my guess. And I think what you would shoot for is having him back against Winnipeg. Depending on how the week goes for Marc-Andre Fleury, because now until Gus is ready to return, Marc-Andre Fleury is your starter. Jesper Wallstedt is your backup. So if we just say Gus is out for a week, let's just say that's kind of set the rotation. Then you go Fleury, Jesper, Fleury in these 3 games.
Yeah,
similar circumstances.
That's what you have to do. You don't have Jesper playing multiple games right now. You only play him if you have to.
Yeah, and it's not. You look at the numbers. I mean, it's not like oh God, we're season's over. I mean, it is like I was saying this in the postcast. Like it is going to be a loss that you feel, because Filip Gustavsson has been essentially he's saved essentially 1 goal per game when he's been in. Marc-Andre Fleury's numbers this year are pretty darn good. 6-1-1, 2.51 goals against average, and a .909 save percentage. He has only given up more than 3 goals once. And that was the first start he had of the year against Seattle. And if you recall, that was, he had not gotten it. Like, that was his first game of the season, wasn't really set in the backup role yet. He's going about a week or 2 in between starts, depending on the schedule. But he's had some good performances, shut down the Tampa Bay Lightning. He has, like, the game against the Los Angeles Kings, where I know the Wild lost, but he was 30 out of 32 in that game. He's had some pretty good performances so far this year.
Yeah, and like you said, with how the kind of schedule has worked out, he's gone long stretches without playing, and that's not ideal. It's had to be the second of a back-to-back, and so that's always tough because the forwards and the D are either it's a travel day and then they're coming in and then they're tired and you have to really steal a game for the rest of the team because we saw that they dominated Anaheim, but they were gassed against LA, and he tried, but it was just LA knew the Wild were a tired team, and so that's going to happen. But like you said, he's beat some cup winning teams in the past that have a lot of offensive firepower. So we'll see. I mean, the Wild have actually played pretty well against the Panthers, in the past here. So
a lot of goals
this season.
They've scored a lot of goals against the Panthers over the last couple of seasons, and it's going to be a fun matchup. I'm going to complain about it again because it is my right and my duty as a morning person now. 8:30 p.m. national puck drop
for
is
Central team.
Abhorrent. It is awful because it's not going to be 8:30. I'll tell you that much. It's going to be closer to 9.
Yeah, they'll push it, post game.
So I guess I will just watch the replay the next day. But we'll talk about those games later on in the show. I do want to talk about the point that you made just a little bit ago, because as with the Los Angeles Kings, there have been other Western Conference opponents. The Wild have played plenty of them this year. The record not so great, but what are the circumstances? What have led to those losses, and how is the rest of the West doing against the playoff teams in the West? We'll talk about all of that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Mint Mobile. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals Dwight Schrute style just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy, no hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them out on it. Turns out it is really easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. There you'll see that right now all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered to the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNHL. $45 upfront payment required. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is also brought to you by Game Time. We are in the midst of the winter sports season, and if you're looking for a way to beat the cold outside, although it hasn't been too bad yet this Minnesota winter, you've got plenty of opportunities to watch the Timberwolves, the Vikings, the Wilds, the Gophers, you name it. Game Time can get you there with great deals on great seats. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting your favorite tickets even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Programming notes, no postcast on Wednesday. Friday and Saturday, we got you covered, though. We'll have you covered for the Utah game and the Winnipeg game on Saturday. Should be a great amount of fun. Make sure that you check out Locked On Wild after those two games. Also, make sure you check out our Discord server. The link to join is in the description of today's episode. Alex, the Minnesota Wild are 2-6-1 against Western Conference playoff teams so far this season. After a loss now to the Vegas Golden Knights, lost to Edmonton earlier in the week, this continues to be a bit of a sore on what has been a solid season for the Minnesota Wild so far. But the other records for other teams, I crunched up the numbers. Winnipeg against Western Conference opponents this year is 5-3-1. Dallas is 3-3. Winnipeg, or Vegas, that is. Vegas is having a great time against Western Conference playoff teams. They're 8-2-1 against them so far. So while the Wilds have 2-6-1 is not great. But I want to point out a couple of things as to like the circumstances in which the games happen. And I'm sure there are going to be people that hear me say that just roll their eyes, because it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. At the end of the day, you got to find a way to win the games. The Wild have done great against the Eastern Conference playoff teams, 4-0 so far. The first test against Western Conference playoff teams was the second night of a back-to-back. So 2-1 loss in OT. You lose by 1 goal. Big ups to Zach Bogosian for the penalty that he committed in regulation to give the Wild a point in that game. I keep bringing that up every time I remember it, because if he doesn't take the penalty there, that's a regulation loss. But, whatever. The Wild then, the next chance they get was against the Los Angeles Kings. That ended up being a 5-1 loss. That was the game where Kirill took the shot to the face, missed a portion of the second period, I think it was, to get stitched up. He came back. That was like a 2-0 Kings lead until late in the second when they kind of pulled away. 2-1 loss to Dallas. A 4-1 loss to Winnipeg, but again, that was 2-1 until the last couple of minutes when there was a power play goal allowed in an empty netter. You beat Vancouver 3-2 in OT. Lost 4-1 to the Los Angeles Kings. Same story there. It was 2-0 until late in the game, and then a couple of empty netters. You lose a 1-goal game to the Vegas Golden Knights. So I've made this point more than a few times this year. These circumstances previously, and of course there was that Edmonton eyesore, the 7-1 loss. With the exception of that Edmonton game, these have all been close games for most of the game. So it's progress compared to where the Wild were at last season and even the season before. But you still want to see some wins mixed in against those playoff caliber opponents. They have beaten the playoff caliber opponents in the East, but the West are the ones we care about.
Yeah, that's who they're going to be seeing in the playoffs. And the Wild struggle is to get out of the first round, and they're going to be playing one of these teams in the first round if they make the playoffs. So they have to show these teams that they are for real, because I still don't think some of these teams think the Wild are, legit contender for the cup until they prove it in the postseason. So that's what they have to start doing, is winning against the playoff teams, especially in the Central Division too, because the playoffs are set for you to face somebody right within that division most likely. So here we go.
Yeah, if the playoffs started today, because of Gary Bettman's wonderful postseason format, the Minnesota Wild would host the Dallas Stars.
The worst team that's been a thorn in the Wild side. That would be something else. Like going up against Jake Ottinger and getting goalied.
Yeah, I'm holding firm to the need for a deadline acquisition to pull this in the right direction. But I look at this year's Dallas team, and they've got a couple players that are having great seasons from an offensive perspective, but I think the offense by and large for the Stars is down this year.
Jason Robertson's been missing all season. He's been on the milk carton. It's been Matt Duchene doing the heavy lifting, and losing. Looks like, who knows when Tyler Sagan's going to be back. So that was, he was playing great with Matt Duchene, and another guy that's always in the Wild thorn is Marchment. So it's an interesting team, because on the back end, there's not a whole lot of greatness there other than Heiskanen, and Lindell's okay, but you got Matt Dumba back there, but who knows what you're going to get out of him. Yeah, it's not great.
But what do all these teams have in common in the Western Conference? Winnipeg, multiple lines, quality depth. Vegas, multiple lines, quality depth. Dallas, multiple lines, quality depth. Edmonton, two of the best three players on the planet. Los Angeles, multiple lines, quality depth.
Cup-winning players.
Yeah.
Kopitar, just amazing. Hall of Famer.
Vancouver, I know they're missing key pieces, but still multiple lines, quality depth. Colorado is the only team currently, other than the Minnesota Wild, that is like you look at the bottom six that they have and you say, that's not great. And I'm not throwing shade at the Wild, because obviously Kirill Kaprizov is playing the best of anybody in the league right now. But who would have thought that the second line scoring issue would have crawled out from underneath the mattress again? Oh, wait, you could have seen that coming.
Yes.
So that if they can get that shored up, and you get Joel Eriksson Ek back, the defense and the goaltending have proven consistent enough that I think we've moved past mirage territory there. But the scoring is going to need some help in order to really turn this into this team's going to be a problem.
Yeah, we always talk about it. We saw it tonight or last night. Kirill had to do everything himself. And come playoff time, it's so much harder to score goals. Well, even getting into the playoffs, so they're it's not guaranteed that they're in yet. So they really got to figure out this depth scoring. We've seen it with cup-winning teams, guys on third and fourth lines. Third pairing D scoring big goals, and they're gonna have to figure it out, especially if the standings stay the way they are. If they have to play Dallas. Ryan Hartman step up to the plate. Foligno try to chip in. Guys like that are gonna have. They got a contract extensions for a reason. To help contribute to the offense.
Up it. Then again, I guess it could be worse. You could be the 8-23 Nashville Predators, who have half the points that the Minnesota Wild do right now.
What a
half.
nightmare for Andrew Burnett and poor Darby. Darby thought he was joining a cup contending team there in Nashville, and oh man, if Burnett gets fired, and I don't know if Darby would last even a full season there, which would be that would be tough for Darby.
If Bruno gets fired and I'm John Hines,
All right,
I say get over here.
He's a power play magician. So yeah.
Hey, it turns out that unit needs a little help.
Yes.
Not as much as the penalty kill.
We would take Bruno back in a heartbeat.
Easy. That'd be fun. It'd be fun to have him on the bench again.
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll see. Again, this is going to be my stance for the month of December, considering who's out. If you can be over 500 in December, you've built up enough equity to be able to, that would not hurt you. It's more so about just getting players back in the lineup and making sure that you don't lose anybody else for extended stretches. Like this is it for the injuries. I'm done with the injuries right now.
Yeah, and we gotta say one more thing too. The friendly fire. It's incredible how many guys on the team are hitting their own players with the puck. It's crazy. Yeah. When you're in the shooting lanes, watch out. For the Wild. Seriously.
You don't need to pull a Happy Gilmore and go stand in the baseball, like the batting cage, and just take fastballs. Like,
well, how about, and this wasn't a Wild player, but how about Freddie Gaudreau trying to Justin Jefferson the puck, and then he just yeeted the puck out of there. That was I don't know what, he went out of body there for a second. He could have hurt his hand just like Middleton did.
Yeah, the moment he did that, I was just like,
and you knew they were going to score on the power play.
Oh yeah,
that was a given.
I think what I'm going to start doing for postcasts is however many power play opportunities the Wild get, I'm going to take a coin and flip and see if I do better than the Wild power play or the Wild penalty kill did. We'll chart it. We'll see. Maybe I can go back and do that for the first 31 games and see where my special teams numbers are at compared to the team. It might be a fun bit. Yeah. Fun way to pass the time. I want to finish with a little fun hypothetical because I threw this out on the social media landscape. Kirill Kaprizov is having unbelievable. He is just on a heater. Unbelievable heater this year, to the point that I'm looking around and I'm like, have we ever seen something like this in the history of Minnesota sports? So we'll toy around with that a little bit to finish the show as we continue things here on Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Minnesota Vikings in action tonight. And at last check, they were 7-point favorites over the Chicago Bears. I feel good about that. I think the Vikings now, having clinched a playoff spot, I think they would love nothing more than to just roast and toast, or since it's a whiteout game, freeze the Bears. And new coach bump, not a thing. Bears are still bad. So you can check the latest odds with FanDuel. And hopefully we'll see a Vikings victory here tonight. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. And once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to follow along with us on all of our different social media platforms, whether it be X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. I think that's all of them. You can find it all of the links in our link tree, which is in the episode description here today. Alex, I'll read you one of my latest social media posts because I was just curious. Open forum time. Is Kirill Kaprizov having the most dominant season a Minnesota player has ever had? List the nominees below because he is making the sun look cold this year. And his season just has that feeling to it where every time he plays, he's going to do something he's going to do something to impact the game. He just looks like the best player on the ice every game he's on the ice. And it's such a rarity here in Minnesota to see a player like in that space. And the responses were fantastic. Adrian Peterson for the Vikings was a big one. That season where he ran for 2,000 yards and Christian Ponder was the quarterback for that Vikings team, and literally he was the offense. That's a great one. Our friend Dan Bradley, he said 03-04 Kevin Garnett led the league in points and rebounds, top 10 in blocks, top 20 in steals. 2012 Adrian Peterson, 2,097 yards, 8 off the all-time record. He would have gotten it, but Leslie Frazier was like, no, we got to play for the win here. Go for the field goal. Still bitter about that. So those are two that come to mind. Joe Mauer's MVP season is another. There were mentions of Kirby Puckett. Randy Moss, obviously, just dominated. Yeah, pretty much every game he played in. A lot of great responses. Justin Jefferson did it last year. It's something that we have, like, I don't know to this level, but we have seen it. But it's rare. It's rare in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really, really exciting athletes right now in the Twin Cities. You got Anthony Edwards. He's making his climb to be a potential future MVP. So he could join the ranks of all those other answers by folks. You have Justin Jefferson. Just if it seems like every game he's breaking some type of Vikings record, and he's only a few seasons into his career. So that's insane. Kirill, Royce Lewis. He's when he's finally healthy, he's starting to make some amazing plays out there too. We'll see if he can keep that going. And yeah, it's fun to have all these athletes in the Twin Cities, because we've put up with a lot of losing. So it's time for some winning, and time for these guys to continue to break records and try to win MVPs.
And you're getting into special territory when this happened over the weekend, where people were saying like Kirill Kaprizov has hit the 45-point mark. If we go back to like the 2000 whatever season, he would be the second leading scorer on the team. And you're like, he's only played 30 games.
It's incredible, right? I mean, there hasn't been anybody like him other than Gaborik, and what he's doing is better than what Gaborik. I was there for when Gaborik had a 5-goal night. I'll never forget that against the New York Rangers, because my Uncle Joe was announcing that game for the Rangers broadcast, and we got to go up in the press box, and I was like, that is one of the best hockey performances I've seen in a while. And Kirill is doing stuff that not even Gaborik did in his career.
Oh man, just wait till Kirill has his 5-goal game. I hope it happens in the second round of the playoffs.
Oh, that would just be magical. That would be amazing. And it's incredible that he is tied for the lead in goals with Leon Draisaitl. I mean,
yeah,
we mentioned, you talked about him earlier. Edmonton having two of the best players in the world, and he's right there with one of them. And he's going to put himself right in the top 5 for the Hart, no doubt.
He'll win it. I'm hot take. There's so much variability with these awards.
Yes.
I would love if Kirill would win it. I feel like he's going to be a finalist for it if he keeps this up, but his performance is going to be entirely dependent on how the team does.
I mean, you take him off the team, it's like
they'd be worse than Nashville.
Well, yes. It's amazing what he's doing. I mean, Edmonton at least has 2 of those guys, and so yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, that Mauer year in 2009, 28 home runs, 96 RBIs.
For a catcher.
138 games played, and he hit 365. That's oh my God.
And he grew up here, and he never had to leave.
Yeah.
It's just that's even cooler that he got to play for his hometown team, and we thank Joe for all the memories and all the division titles, in the AL Central.
If you have a thought on the most dominant seasons or athletes in Minnesota, drop it in the comments. I would love to hear where everybody thinks, is Kaprizov kind of walking on rarefied air here in the state, or are there plenty of others that have done this as well? Let us know in the comments how you feel about his place amongst the greatest of the greats. There were a couple people who said, like, we've never seen anything like this. I tend to agree because, like, this has always been a Wild team that's been built on goaltending and defense. And the only other time that they had anybody even remotely close to the scoring lead was Kirill. So we'll see what happens the rest of the way. Games this week, just quickly to wrap up. Florida Panthers Wednesday night, 8:30-ish puck drop. So, again, no postcast for that game. Friday and Saturday, we got you covered as the Wild will host Utah, and then they are at Winnipeg on Saturday. So another game against Winnipeg in the second night of a back-to-back. Thanks, schedule makers, for that. I feel like your division opponents should be off limits for back-to-backs.
No, 100%. Yeah,
call me crazy.
Those are the most meaningful games for sure.
Yeah, schedule Eastern Conference teams back-to-back games. Yeah. Crying out loud.
We get Anaheim and San Jose.
just a mess. But anyway, we've got you covered as we typically do all week long. So make sure to subscribe to Locked On Wild so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and follow us on your favorite social media platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We get you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.